So hello everyone, thank you very much for joining us today for our session on accounts payable automation. Quick note before we begin, especially if this is your first Microsoft Teams live event, you'll find the Q&A panel, the right hand side of your screen. Feel free to ask questions here at any time during our presentation. We'll try and answer as many as possible during our Q&A session at the end of the webinar. And any questions you post here are only visible to the presenters, so feel free to add some contact details if you've logged in as anonymous, so we can follow up with you in case we don't get time to answer all the questions today. The session is also being recorded, and after the event you'll be receiving a download link and a synopsis of what we're covering. In today's session, Kevin and I will be presenting why accounts payable is still one of the most popular business processes to automate. We'll also be discussing the typical AP challenges that organisations share with us, what benefits you can expect from automating this process. Kevin will also be giving us a demonstration, for example, procure-to-pay process with one of the systems we offer, and Go-Back will be taking our Q&A session at the end of the presentation. So, in the world of business process automation, accounts payable projects have always been one of the most popular choices and still are today. And of course, every organisation has an AP function, and it's often a resource-intensive process. Even in today's digital age, there's still a lot of manual steps in most AP processes that require some type of human intervention. So AP staff are still in demand, even in our current economic climate. You can see there's still something in the order of over 2,000 jobs advertised for accounts payable on Seek alone. And when it comes to the primary drivers for wanting to automate AP, each organisation's finance processes are obviously different. And there's a host of different challenges and pressures. But we're going to list some of the challenges here that we hear most often from our clients. And firstly, cost to process an invoice, comprising of the HR cost in accounts payable and elsewhere in the organisation, the cost of any existing business process outsourcing, that's primarily for data entry, and the costs of systems and storage. So many other factors can be included in calculating the cost, and that's why you'll see a large variation in quoted national averages. But AP does soak up a lot of human resource, and those staff could probably be better used elsewhere in the organisation, especially in a post-pandemic world where an unfortunate reality is you may need more resource in accounts receivable than possibly you've previously had. Secondly, the time to process an invoice, comprising of data entry, invoice matching, exception management, and the approval process. And to process an invoice, it's another challenge often quoted to us, can affect late payment fees, maybe being put on stop by a supplier, or failing to take advantage of early payment discounts. And thirdly, another area that's often quoted to us as a challenge, be compliance and governance, including the duplicate payment protection or duplicate invoice detection, fraud prevention, and everyone's favourite task, auditing. Now, benchmark data isn't often available for just our region. There's lots of data globally on the average performance across a range of AP benchmarks. So we've included a few facts and figures here from recent research, and this is global research, to offer an idea of what good looks like in an automated AP world. Now, most of these respondents are from North America and Western Europe, so this data is slightly different to what we would see on average when consulting with clients, especially as paper invoices here are thankfully a thing of the past for many industries at least. But also we're burdened often with much higher labour costs, which does skew the figures. But this survey, the data from the survey comes from finance leaders from a range of SMB, SME and enterprise organisations. And over the years, these respondents have rated what they see as their top pressures in the accounts payable function. And last year, the top 2 pressures reported by these respondents were a high percentage of exceptions and invoice payment approvals taking too long, both of which are problems that a Konica Minolta accounts payable solution can very much assist with. And if we drill into the top issue of exceptions, you can see here that the vast majority of these were reported as failures in the two-way match. And of course, discrepancies like these can be a pain to resolve, may include raising the issue with the original requester, the approver and the supplier as well. And thankfully, this is something that one of our AP solutions can assist with. We offer an automated invoice matching and exception management workflow, which can alert a responsible party, be it internal or an external supplier, without the need for human intervention at all from the AP team. A good accounts payable automation solution should be able to address many of the concerns that are listed here on this survey as well. You can also find data from the survey on the average global performance of several major AP metrics, which can often be an interesting benchmark and a measure of what good can look like once automated. So we've selected 4 here to show. One is the cost to process a single invoice, and that's the all-inclusive cost. The time to process a single invoice, invoice exception rate, and the percentage of invoices that are processed straight through. Now, when it comes to the average non-automated AP performance, here's what the reports show for the global averages, and these are in Australian dollars. So it costs on average $18 to process a single invoice, and over 10 days to process a single invoice, an exception rate of just over 23%, and a pretty poor performance of under 20% for invoices that pass straight through. Now, here's what we're aiming for. These are the global best-in-class numbers for an automated AP function. So $3.11 the cost to process an invoice, under 3 days time to process a single invoice, just over a 10% exception rate, and a much healthier 65% for invoices processed straight through. Now, if you're aware of some of these numbers in your organisation, you might be pleased to hear that we often exceed the global best-in-class figures post-AP automation here in Australia. With those figures in mind, this is often one of the first questions we like to ask our prospective clients during our discovery workshop. It's definitely worth exploring as early as possible, so it's good to know on the scale where you sit and where you could achieve an ROI on an automated system. And if you actually don't know where you sit on the scale at the moment, I'd be more than delighted to assist with the host of ROI calculator tools that we use during one of our no obligation discovery workshops. And when it comes to selecting an AP solution, it can be quite challenging to compare apples and apples. There's no official definition of what an automated AP solution is or what features it should have. Many of the low-cost solutions only have the most basic of features, and many of the expensive solutions may have features that you don't particularly need, but you definitely end up paying for. There are lots of moving parts in an AP solution, but broadly speaking, much of the functionality can be categorized into 3 sections. We start off with invoice capture. This is the process where we take your scanned or paper, your scanned paper or electronic AP invoices, normally PDF attachments and email. We automatically extract the relevant details and prepare the data for your finance system with little or no intervention required on your side. This is the part of the solution where most of those smarts go, arguably the most important part to get right, because the rest of the solution is obviously only as good as the data is working from. This component is also where we see the most variation in the capabilities of the software platforms. Now, many prospective clients will focus on the accuracy of the software, which is normally expressed as a percentage, maybe also referred to as OCR. Now, what we find is most clients are looking for an idea on the number of data quality issues they'll have to deal with. But many of the quoted numbers for accuracy are obviously generated with an invoice set that's completely different to yours. Despite what you may be told, even with the most advanced solutions on the market, and we have most of them in our portfolio, you're unlikely to get near 100% accuracy for a whole host of reasons. And when there's a data quality issue, it could be normally on your side for your staff to fix. So bear in mind that many solutions which are offered on a cost per invoice basis don't take into account the extra labour you need to perform for tasks like data verification, maintenance of the system as well. That's why, in addition to those advanced capture solutions that we offer, we also have a fully managed service which uses all of the smart applications to extract the data, then a human to perform the verification. So you never need to worry about that step in the process. And if you think an option like this is expensive, our fully managed hands-off service can cost from just 50 cents per invoice. You never need to worry if a supplier changes their invoice layout, or if a stamp obscures the text, or someone drops some coffee, stains the invoice before scanning. It will always reach you in perfect condition. Plus, you'll have better line of sight for your AP liabilities. They'll be visible shortly after they arrive in the business, not when AP staff member has time to perform the data entry, so it should help the cash flow. So the next part is workflow and automation. This is where your business rules and logic live. Functions like the 2- or 3-way matching, if required, live in here, as well as the rules for automatic account selection and coding. Also, your delegation of authority is plugged in here, so the system can automatically route invoices to the correct approver if required as part of the workflow. And this is where we have some really cool features, from the duplicate invoice detection, anti-fraud measures, features like intelligent vendor identification, line item learning, and auto GL coding, make the process very smooth and automated. And finally, the integration piece manages the data access bidirectionally from all of the necessary systems. Could be your finance system, maybe a separate purchase order system, directory services, of course, to make sure that everyone has the right access at the right level, and any industry line of business application like construction management, transport management, practice management. All of that is handled by our integration piece. Now, there are arguably 2 other functions which we haven't included. We could have also included analytics and reporting, which is the fastest growing area in software for finance. But there's a host of business analytic platforms like Power BI and functions in your own finance solution. So we haven't included it here, but if your finance solution doesn't offer this function, the end-to-end solution that we can offer can be configured with analytics and visual reporting. And I think Kevin will be covering some of that in the demonstration later. Now, we could have also included document management for storing the digital AP invoice. It's not strictly mandatory, but can make tasks like audits, compliance with records keeping, resolving supplier disputes a hell of a lot easier. All Konica Minolta AP solutions can be configured with a standards compliant management tool that meets ATO's 5 rules for record keeping. Now, before we move on to a demonstration of a system in action with Kevin, it's worth reiterating that everyone's AP process is completely different. So when it comes time to look for a partner to implement an automated solution, it's important to select a solution provider that has the flexibility to meet your requirements, as opposed to having to change your own processes to accommodate that of a particular software application. That's why Konica Minolta have partnered with some of the biggest software vendors in the AP space. So when you work with us, you can be assured you're getting the right solution for your organization, as opposed to the only solution that another company is able to offer. All of our solutions are tailored to meet your specific requirements, but they're also platforms as well, as Kevin will explain later. It means after AP, you're actually able to enable modules to take care of other automation requirements, including accounts receivable, contract management, banking reconciliation, and many. We also have a host of other cutting-edge technology to help with a lot of the workload in and around AP, such as email management and sentiment analysis too. Now it's time to see some of this technology in action. So I'd like to introduce Kevin, who's going to demonstrate a procure-to-pay process with one of our solutions. Thank you, Kevin.
Thanks very much, Seth. I'm hoping everyone can see my screen right now. Just wanted to reiterate what we're presenting to you. It's a platform, not a product. We've deployed, we optimize in all sorts of places: HR departments, enrollment forms, WHS and incident management, contract management, etc. So the idea is that once you have the platform, you can expand into other areas of the business that do require process automation. And because you've actually sort of bought the entry ticket, if you like, on the back of a good ROI for the accounts payable area, it's a very cost efficient way to move forward. As mentioned, it's a fully managed service. It's also very scalable, very extensible. Our smallest customer is a tiny school in the Adelaide Hills, and our largest customer processes 80,000 invoices a month from 65 different stores across 240 workflow steps. So it can be extraordinarily complex, extraordinarily scalable. It's a seamless device agnostic mobile access platform. So in other words, you can do your approvals, you can do your form submissions, etc. from your mobile device. It adapts to your existing business processes rather than forcing you to change your processes. This is quite a significant, important feature, because a lot of stuff you can buy off the shelf around accounts payable automation, you have to change the way your business works. And every business works differently. So rather than forcing you into that square hole when you're around peg, we actually are able to say, look, that's fine. Let's make something bespoke for you that works for you, that's easy for your team, yet still brings forward all the advantages of a process automation system. Okay, so what effectively is we optimize? Well, it's an AWS hosted cloud provided software as a service platform, and it sort of consists of 4 primary services: capture, content, workflow, and integration. So it's sort of fairly simple, and we can sort of tailor and bespoke elements of this to suit your needs, better. So it's all about the customer, it's all about you guys. But in this demonstration, we're focusing on procure-to-pay. And then Seth shared this slide earlier, and he talked about where the sort of pain points are. And there's 3 primary pain points that we can sort of see here that contribute so much to the problems involved in most AP areas and most procure-to-pay systems. And that is discrepancies, the purchase order, lack of purchase order, incorrect PO. And we can sort of see that Ardent Partners have sort of focused on this and said, look, in 32% of all organisations, there's no linkage between AP and procurement, which is ridiculous considering the importance of this feature within, or this capability within your organisation. So I'm going to introduce some people in terms of our storyboard and who's going to be involved with this end-to-end procure-to-pay piece. And we've got Betty, who is going to be the requisitioner, Albert, who's going to process the invoice when it comes in, a supplier, the finance manager, and of course we've got Angela, the auditor. We've sort of discussed a lot with people out there and what's their big pain points are, and they really would like a way to sort of handle the auditor situation in a much more efficient manner that doesn't take their team off deck, or doesn't lock them away for days and days. So we're going to quickly address how we would do that in this environment. Okay, so the first step on this is that the procurer or the requisitioner wants to buy some bricks, and we're using a fictitious home organisation for this. So Betty needs some bricks and she's on site, so she has access to a mobile device. She opens up a form on that mobile device, fills out the form, and when she's finished, she just simply presses submit. Now, I won't harp onto that too much. I'll come back to it in a moment. So that workflow that happens there is automatically flagged to the accounts payable clerk. And the accounts payable clerk, if it's within its purveyance to do so, will approve that or not approve that. It can be automatically checked against budget and all sorts of different things as background and automated operations. But basically, once it's approved, Betty gets an email confirming the bricks have been ordered. Sam, the supplier, gets an email confirming the quality and cost. And then Sam is able to produce an invoice and deliver out to the client. The purchase order is safely held within the workflow system for later matching to an invoice. Okay, so I'm going to jump into a live demonstration here. Do forgive me. Okay, so here is our accounts payable guide. And what we're going to do, we're going to fill in a form here for a purchase order. And this purchase order is basically URL. So it's very simple to do. It's very quick to fill out. I'm going to select my supplier. It's Barry's Bricks. I'm from the Adelaide office, and I'll put a description in here. And from what I can do here, I'll just put down $4,400. Thank you, Mr. Google, for remembering all this. Now, I can also attach other documents. So if I was doing this from a mobile device, I could take a photograph and attach that as a document. So consider in a WHS environment where something's gone wrong, I can take a photograph, submit the form, we've already got evidential tracking of something going on. So these forms are readily customized to your own specific needs. So I'll now press submit, and in a few moments, that's sort of sent off into the ether to get to go through an approval process. Now, because this particular approval process is above $4,000, well, the person that can approve this isn't Albert, the accounts payable clerk. It's actually the finance manager. So in this demonstration, you're going to see me log on, log off as various different people within the process. So at the moment, I'm on as Albert, the accounts payable person. But what I want to do, I want to log out, and I want to jump in here as the finance manager, who I know has got the rights and capability to actually approve this purchase. And you can sort of see the first thing that opens when we look at this is a dashboard, so we can see live information about what's going on, and we can look at some specifics. And these dashboards are driven by widgets, and we can add widgets or customize widgets to suit your particular needs. So over here is my assignments, and I can see here that in my assignments area, I've got a purchase order waiting for review. Okay, and there's Barry's Bricks. So there's that purchase order request there. And I can open this, and I can just simply click on the approval if it's a regular thing, or if I want a bit more of a deep dive, I can open it up and have a good look at it here. So I'm quite happy with all this that's going on, but if I want to, I can sort of route it down an ad hoc route and say, hey, look, I just want a bit more. I want Chris Lane to look at this. A few comments here, please, Chris, look at this. I need you to look at this before I approve it to make sure it's all tickety-boo. But in this case, I'm going to approve that purchase order. All good. Add a little note to it. Save and continue, and off it goes, and it's merry way. So whilst it's doing that, I can sort of talk back to, yep, that's all gone. Beautiful. So I'll just jump back into here, and I'll just log out of here and jump in as the accounts payable clerk. Oh, but before I go, I wanted to show you some analytics. I'll just sign into our analytics package. Seth's meant to remind me, but he completely forgot. So in our analytics package, we can sort of see what's going on here. And this is sort of really a useful tool, because you've got these predictive analytics. You can talk about what's my cash flow going to look like. You know, how can I look at this? And I can sort of cut this up and make this a valuable document in terms of our organization. Or I can do even things like a performance comparison. I can say, well, look at this. That's all going terrific. But I will look for workflow user productivity. I can say, wow, yeah, Alana Johnson, she's an absolute gun at this, because she's actually way above the average in terms of this. So what's she doing better than someone else in terms of this? So I can start to look at this and look at ways to sort of introduce a continuous improvement model for the team that are involved with this. So bear with me, I'll just jump back in here.
Thanks, Kevin. I can remind you that there is a host of dashboards built standard, but what we have here is the ability to create any dashboard from the data we've collected. And the important point to note here, the usefulness for a dashboard that isn't in your finance application is that a lot of the invoices in transit here may be waiting for approval. So they're not showing up yet until they're approved in your finance application, but you may wish to see, for example, a list of AP liabilities that have pending processing, which you'll only normally see once they're approved and processed and available from perhaps your ERP dashboard, where here you get to see everything shortly after it's come to the organisation and been processed in any view you want.
Great. So in this phase 2, the ingestion and processing of the invoice, I will just sort of put something out there about this. So the invoice has now been delivered by our friend Sam. Now it can be delivered via a web portal, by a watch folder, as an email attachment, or even scanned in from absolutely any multifunction device. I have to say that this platform is completely vendor agnostic. You don't have to have Konica Minolta devices sitting around waiting to do this. So what actually happens is we provide this as a managed service, as Seth mentioned. So we extract the data that you require, invoice number, dollar values, line items, etc. It checks to see if the purchase order exists already in the system. It checks to see to the ABN. It checks the supplier exists in our ERP system, and bank deals, etc., to try and actually reduce the amount of or potential for fraud in that space. So, but once it's done all that, it sends the accounts payable clerk, who'll then do some GL coding. So what that process looks like is actually quite complicated. But what's going on here is that invoice comes in, it goes through a series of checks and balances that are all automated. And the primary ones we can talk about are it checks for missing data. If we harken back to that previous slide, it talked about the problems. Invoice is missing data. If that happens, we get that routed straight back to the supplier. We check to see if there's duplicate invoice. How many organizations have actually been menaced by actually receiving 2 invoices and paying them twice and wasting cash and all that time it takes to chase all that down? Comes to another gate. Is there a match to the PO number, etc.? And then we start looking at, do we on-charge, etc. So it could be quite complex, but this is built explicitly for your requirements. It's built around your requirements. So what actually happens is Albert here, the AP clerk, he'll receive a notification to check that invoice. And because this invoice is above a certain dollar value, we've got some business rules wrapped around this that are sort of intrinsic to how the whole process works. Once he's gone through it, it goes for a final check to Felicity before that is actually posted out to the finance system. So here we have, I've logged on here as mate Albert, the accounts payable clerk, and I can see that the Barry's Bricks invoices come in. Due to a timing issue on my part, Barry's Bricks has no PO number. So what I can do, I'll just tell it to go and recheck that purchase order match. Okay. Off that'll trot. We'll wait a couple of seconds. Okay, and we can now see that Barry's Bricks invoice is now waiting a GL coding review. So I'll do that, and I've got to say, Albert's got a magnificent job. He can literally do this from the beach on his tablet. So here's our document here, and we can sort of see what's happening there. Now we've got some other bits and pieces here. We can actually click on this and look at the related documents to this, and we can sort of see there's our purchase order. It's been approved. I can click on that and bring it up and all that type of thing. I can look at some invoice line items here. So, up we come, and we can see it's missing GL codes. And again, we can reference back to our process automation piece. We can say, if you get an invoice for bricks from Barry's Bricks, it's always going to be a specific GL code. So we can actually further automate this type of stuff. And then I'll just pick on my cost centers, and that looks all about right to me. So I can save that, and away it'll go. So once I've done that, it'll automatically get processed through and sent to the next stage. And the next stage is, of course, our finance manager to approve this. But whilst I'm here, I will just talk on how often does an organization get a query from a supplier saying, hey, look, I've sent my invoice in. Can you tell me where it is in the process? With this system, we can click on this, and what will actually happen is it'll tell us exactly where it is, exactly who's got it. So it's actually a very efficient system there. With one of our clients, we even have it so the suppliers can actually log in on a read-only and check the progress of their own documentation. So we've now done that. I'll just take a sip while it's doing it, if you don't mind. Okay, so that's all done nicely. And I'll now log out of this and start jumping in as the finance manager, because the finance manager, because it's above a certain dollar value, has the final sign off in this. Okay. And again, we can sort of see what's going on here, and these are very customizable, etc. So I'll just click on our assignment pieces here, and we've got a Might take a second or two to come through. So here's Barry's bricks. We can see it's waiting for a financial manager's approval, which is me. Again, I can click on this and have a good long view at that and have some interesting look at it. Actually, what I will do, I'll just jump on that. I'll just say that maybe I've noticed that Albert has actually attached the wrong GL code to this, which is actually, oh no, we need to fix this. It's not IT development. What it is, it's maintenance services. So I can change the GL codes or change the cost centers because I'm the finance manager now. And once I've done that, happy days, I can say that's much, much better, and away it can go. So that's now approved. It'll go through that process, confirm the operation, and move on from there. So back to my PowerPoint presentation. So we've done that. Yep, okay. So now along comes a visit from the auditor. And this is sort of, as I say, it's a bit of a problem for a lot of organisations, but this way, in our COVID world, we can actually have the auditor working from home and just simply be given a read-only access to the solution. So let's log on as our auditor now. Okay, so what I've got here is obviously a search criteria. So the auditor, and we can, by the way, tailor this to suit yourselves. But in this case, we just want to search for our mate Barry Bricks. Search, and there's that invoice. It's approved. It's export ready to go into the system. But as an auditor, I want to have a bit of a good look at this because I want to make sure it's all kosher and everything's gone on right. So yeah, great. Let's have a look at some related documents. Okay, I'll pop that over there. I can add the files to the tree, so I've got a sort of much broader view of what's going on here. But see all this. And over here, I can start to look at things like document activity, which is a really interesting thing because, again, an auditor wants to see what's been going on. And you can sort of see what's been going on with this particular invoice. If I look at some document information, I can see that this is a full history, if you like, an audit trail of this particular document that's come along and how we've been treated it, how long it's taken, etc. So I can see very, very clearly all of this going on. Again, if I need to, I can actually start making some other questions around this, forward this to someone to ask for a further clarification. I can make an annotation to this, etc., etc. So I can sort of go from all that, go from that position of being fully informed and fully understanding of what's going on. But once my auditor job's done, and I can jump out of here. Oops, jump out of here. Do another search for another property. Let's go for one site. Let's go for timber. Timber search. There we go. Here's timber. And again, I've got full freedom to look at this and see what's going on and make sure that everything we're doing is kosher and above board. So the auditor's job is a much simpler one because they've got full visibility. Excuse me. Full visibility, full history, full audit trail around each of the documents. So with that, I'm actually sort of coming to the end of mine. But I just wanted to give you a quick summary of the problems addressed. We've simplified and automated supplier interactions. Someone produces a PO, the purchase orders generated, delivered to the supplier, etc., all automatically. We've provided a consistent user and supplier experience. They always get exactly what they always get. They always get the right PO. There's always going to be a match. We've provided a mobile platform for procurement requests and approvals. So people can search, find, retrieve, approve, etc. from their tablet, from their mobile device, working from anywhere, which is so significant in our sort of COVID world these days. We've reduced the data entry time for your accounts payable team because they're not having to worry about creating templates for OCR work. They're not having to worry about sort of having some extra skill sets around that type of that sort of invoice capture piece. It's all provided as a managed service to you. Process time's greatly reduced. You just see me take from purchase order through to invoice process, and it just took a couple of minutes. When you look at Seth's worst case scenario of 10 days, well, we're probably somewhat ahead on that. Error reduction, shortening the process, and of course improved visibility and auditability of the whole process and end to end. Again, I have to stress it's a platform, not a product. So once you've got it in there, you can expand its use into other areas of the business. HR onboarding, offboarding, IT onboarding, all that type of work can be done within this platform. Alrighty, so I think that's me to the end, and it's over to question and answer at this point in time. I'll just mute myself and hand back to Gabash and Seth.
Thank you, Kevin and Seth. Great presentation and demo. Now we're going to open the Q&A, and you can ask questions if you haven't done so far. So if you are asking questions, please give us your name and email addresses. In case we are not able to get to your questions, we can follow up using those details. So we got a few questions here, and I'll start off with the first question over to you, Seth, is around what is average cost of processing an invoice in Australia?
So there's a variety of data available that would cover the local market. It is somewhere between $10.80 and just under $13 is the quoted average for Australia. So much less paper-intensive process tends to reduce the average time and the cost for processing an invoice, but the higher labour rates still keep it over $10.
Thanks, Seth. Now we got a few questions here around pricing and implementation. So if I could combine those questions, and Seth, if you could address this one for me as well, please. How much does your AP solution cost, and how long does it take to implement?
Okay, that's a good question, and obviously one that we get very often. So it's hugely scalable, as Kevin said, from very humble requirements, so a few hundred invoices a month in a full managed service. We've had implementations that would be around $25,000 to $28,000 for 5 years of managed service. So that's the service whereby you redirect all your paper, electronic invoices to us. We prepare and verify the data and prepare it electronically for your finance system. So it's very, very affordable. On there, you have all of the options because it's very, very modular. You're not paying for anything that you don't need, won't need to use, and you can just simply add modules up to an agreed budget, or as you go along. So you can start with one service and scale from there. So it starts very affordable. The average time for implementation will obviously depend on which modules are selected. The service captures the service part because it has human verification, doesn't really need much in the way of setup. So you can actually be live in a matter of a couple of days. For the workflow piece, it simply depends on the size and complexity of your delegation of authority, and it depends whether you're selecting a cloud or on-premise solution because there's extra tasks to perform there. But typically, the actual time taken to perform the deployment is just a few weeks. It can be normally up and running in a couple of months after testing with a new solution.
Excellent. Thanks, Seth. So if there's another question, if I could give it to you. Seth, you mentioned in your presentation the integration component. So we have a question about the what is the preferred method of integration?
So that will depend on the systems we're integrating to. And it's bi-directional, of course. We need to read information to perform the check-in and use the business logic, and we need to push information back to your systems. So it depends on the systems you have in situ. We do have several options from older systems that may take structured data, such as a CSV or an XML. That's an option. A preference is a little bit techie here, but the RESTful APIs, so to talk to the application directly. So if it were more of a modern ERP, even from at the entry level through to Dynamics, Great Plains, etc., there are lots of APIs which we connect to get the data. Now, if there is a system which is pretty antiquated, maybe quite large in situ, and integration has been a challenge before. For those that may have attended our recent robotic process automation session, you may have seen some references to the AP solutions in there, which will enable us to use the user interface of any legacy application. So in theory, we can connect to any application, take the digital data and populate the fields. So really integration isn't a challenge for us. We just simply select a method more appropriate to the systems.
Thanks, Seth. So we got a lot of questions coming. They look like the next question we got is from someone who is not currently KN customer. And Kevin, if you could answer this one for me, please. The question is, I don't have Konica Minolta MFPs. Does it matter?
No, not at all. Not at all. The solution is completely vendor agnostic. Doesn't matter how the documents get in there. It can be from any brand photocopier or scanner, email attachment, watched folder delivery, etc. No, completely vendor agnostic, and very, very simple to integrate with that.
Yeah. Thanks, Kevin. So I think there's another one about integration, but Kevin, I'll pass it over to you. I have Microsoft Dynamic ERP system in our organization. Can this AP solution integrate with that?
Yes, indeed it can. Microsoft, being Microsoft, have very high quality APIs available to us to do this. With other organisations, I won't drop names, but with other organisations, we've actually done it via Data Cube, which was made it even easier. But certainly, integration with Dynamics ERP is not a problem.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. There's another interesting question, probably Seth, if I could pass it over to you. Do you always have to have a purchase order? If not, how does the process works?
That's a good question. No, you don't, is the answer. There's lots of industries or organisations that don't or can't use purchase orders exclusively or at all. So to get these invoices flowing through in an automated fashion, we use business logic and rules. We can recognise suppliers and send the invoices on an automatic approval routing. If it's a reoccurring invoice and you expect it within a specific tolerance and an amount, and only flag it if it's above that, those are the type of rules that go into that workflow engine to ensure that even without something to match to, we can actually look maybe retrospectively at invoices that have been accepted before, check the values, check the tolerance, and if not, it's automatically going to direct it to an appropriate person for approval and or coding. And again, the more invoices it can see and learn in this point of the workflow, the more logic it can apply automatically, such as the line item learning and auto coding, so that there's very little for a human to do apart from approve what the system has selected as most appropriate coding.
Thanks, Seth. Next question is about data security. So the question is my data secure and stored in Australia? So maybe Kevin, if you could please answer that one, please.
Yep, certainly. Yes, this data is secure. I'm just looking for the slide where I've made a quick little reference to that. But we use AWS, and so we're ISO 27001, 27017, and so on and so forth. These are quality certifications performed by independent third-party authorities. In terms of the managed service around the invoice capture, that's also, hosted in Australia, and it actually has a real human being checking those documents out. So for instance, if we scan something in and it's got copy stains on, as Seth mentioned, and it's not very visible, we've got someone who can make an intelligent assessment of that, even down to a handwritten invoice where someone can actually sort of try and interpret that sort of hieroglyphic handwriting. So firstly, to your question, firstly, the data is secure. It's held within Australia. It's held within the highest possible levels of security, and also even the invoice processing is actually held within Australia. So to give that added level of security, we don't want anyone's financial information, leaving the country, if you know what I mean.
Excellent. Thanks, Kevin. there's another one around the Seth, probably if you could answer that one. How do you manage the balance between automating our current practices versus changing the way we do things for the better?
That's a good question. That's more the change management piece. So the adage for process automation is you shouldn't just digitize your existing process. It's an opportunity to review the process and have the most optimal version of that process digitized. So there is a consultancy piece. Obviously, we're engaged with lots of organizations from federal government all the way down to SMBs. And we have a full understanding of best practice. So part of the services of working with the Konica Minolta is that you're guided, and we can make suggestions on what good would look like process-wise. With all our experience automating these types of business processes and understanding what your outcome is. And you don't have to, for organizations with lots of different business units, it's not something that you have to do across the whole organization in one go. You can pick departments or business units, however the organization is sectioned, and work on implementing digital AP processes just for specific areas, because it is, as Kevin said, very, very scalable.
Thanks, Seth. Kevin, there's another one about the solution itself. So does FileBound have a scalable user model if we wish to expand across departments?
Absolutely, absolutely. In fact, that's one of our biggest advantages to this system, is that it's not licensed by the number of workflows. We can actually have as many workflows as you choose within this, and all we need to do is provide some consultancy around the creation of those workflows. So if you start with accounts payable, you can migrate into your HR or whatever other processes you want to automate. It makes it a very, very compelling argument for this, because if you can do the financial ROI around one specific business process, then you can sort of establish a platform, then move it. Scalability. One of the things we do is we assign a customer success manager to the organization. They actually have quarterly or monthly meetings, if they wanted, with the customers, so they can identify additional opportunities for automation as their clients, or as their internal customers, if you like, are getting more used to the system and can see more advantage to it. So it's certainly very scalable and certainly very flexible in terms of that. The licensing model around the workflows is particularly attractive. I hope that covers it.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks, Kevin and Seth. Now the clock is ticking, so I would like to thank you all for your questions as we are nearly towards the end of the session. So if you have submitted your questions and we were not able to answer, we'll follow up with you with the details provided. So I would like to hand back to Seth for the final wrap up. Over to you, Seth. Thanks.
Sorry, I had my mute on there. Thank you very much for that, Gobaksh. So that concludes our session today. So on the screen here, I've got a few ways that you can reach out and contact us, either via your account manager on the phone or via the web here, for perhaps any answers to questions that we didn't get a chance to answer or that come to you after the presentation. And feel free to reach out if you're interested in exploring what one of our AP solutions could do for your organisation, or to organise one of our discovery sessions. As we mentioned earlier, this session will be recorded and we'll send out a link with the synopsis of what we discussed. And from the team here at KM, we'll look forward to welcoming you to another webinar in the near future. Thank you very much for attending.
Thank you all.
Thanks all.
Giving shape to ideas. Konica Minolta.